It's been 8 years since Hollow Knight appeared on our radar, and even so, to this day, the game still hides secrets that most players have never discovered. Can you believe it? Well, it's true. The Kingdom of Hallownest still has a lot to reveal. So get ready, because today I'm going to show you 10 discoveries that will make you want to go back to this dark and fascinating world right now, and realize that maybe you've missed almost everything. The Pale King's secret workshop in Hollow Knight is one of those discoveries that really stir the player's imagination, isn't it? As soon as I found this hidden room in the White Palace, I was fascinated by the mysterious and sad atmosphere it carries. Those empty armor molds, the weaver spools, and the void tank give a strong sense that it was a dark laboratory, a place where they tried to create something more than simple soldiers. The vessels. This brings a deep layer to the game's story, showing a scientific and desperate side of the Pale King in trying to contain the power of the void. The platform part with thorns that leads to this room seems to me a test worthy of the challenges of Hollow Knight, difficult but rewarding. It's as if the game challenges the player to strive to unlock these secrets, because they are really worth it. The feeling of finding a place like this, hidden and full of lore, reminds me of why I love this style of exploration in games so much. There is always something to be discovered that adds meaning and emotion to what seemed to be just another cycle of fighting and exploration. When I read the plaque that talks about the power of the void, I couldn't help but feel a certain existential weight there. The void, so abstract and at the same time so present throughout the Hollow Knight universe, seems to have been the key to creating these vessels that are so essential to the story. This mixture of creation and destruction, of trial and error, gives a tragic touch to the narrative, something that resonates a lot with me, as it speaks of this constant search for control over something much bigger than us. For me, this place is the personification of the Pale King's dark side, that figure who is not perfect, who has his own moral dilemmas, and makes choices for the greater good that end up leaving heavy marks. When I saw the void tank, I imagined how much he was willing to sacrifice to achieve his goal, and this makes his character even more complex and interesting. He's not just a distant king. He's a being who gets entangled in his own experiments and loses part of his humanity in the process. The Pale King's secret workshop is not just a place to explore. It's a point of reflection for the player, a way to understand what's really behind the creation of the Hollow Knight and the vessels. For me, this makes the game gain a new dimension, as if the silence of that hidden room speaks louder than any dialogue or battle. It's a hidden gem that enriches the whole experience, and every time I go back there, I feel like I'm touching a bigger story, full of mysteries and deep emotions. The Grimm's puppet room in Hollow Knight is one of those hidden details that make us love the game even more. You go up there after the action-packed arena, expecting something grandiose or maybe clues about the troupe, and you come across a secret room where the audience is neither alive nor conscious. They are puppets, mere empty masks that look at the stage. This creates an atmosphere as strange as it is fascinating, because it messes with that feeling that something is wrong, that everything has a deeper reason. The mystery only increases when you activate the mechanism that opens the protective seal of that place. It's as if this room were a kind of sanctuary or a very well-kept secret, a place where the truth about the Grimm troupe was hidden. This protection that seems to disconnect the outside world from what is really happening there reinforces that we cannot take appearances at face value, something that is a recurring theme in Hollow Knight, and that makes me think how intelligent the game is in telling its story through visual details and environments. The idea of the audience being ghosts, or rather puppets, gives a completely different weight to what the troupe represents. They are not acting for living spectators. They are trapped in a closed cycle, a ghost theater where everything is choreographed, controlled, manipulative. This reminds me a lot of reflections on the role of the characters in Hollow Knight. Everyone is part of something bigger, often trapped in destinies or functions, and this creates a melancholic feeling of inevitability that accompanies a good part of the game. This discovery reinforces how much Hollow Knight is not just a game about action and exploration, but an experience that plays with expectations and symbolisms. Seeing that empty stage, that lifeless audience, is almost disturbing but also blessedly interesting. It's as if you were discovering that the story you've been following all this time is a play within a play. Something fractal and full of layers, where the answers are not simply given, but implicit. The Grimm's puppet room is one of those moments that made me pause and think. It reminded me that Hollow Knight is a work made for those who like to get lost, to dig deep and find those little secrets that make the game's universe grow in your head long after turning off the video game. It's a scary and silent space that translates all the dark and magical side of the Grimm troupe in a unique way. The Ogrim's Cave in Hollow Knight is one of those little secrets that make the game so special. Discovering it there, under the bomb that leads to Isma's Grove, was a surprise that moved me. The atmosphere of this place is full of history and respect, not only for the statues of the 5 great knights, but also for the Pale King. That moment made me feel a very deep connection with the game's universe, as if I were stepping on sacred ground of legendary warriors. What caught my attention the most was the statue of Ogrim, a character that many people don't notice at first. Using the Dream Nail on him to release extra fights is a genius touch by Team Cherry. These battles are not just challenges. They are a direct tribute to the courage and strength of these knights who, despite appearing little, carry a huge weight in Hollow Knight's lore. There is something very personal about this interaction, as if you were honoring their memory literally on the battlefield. Another detail that marked me was the studio's care in including these statues in such a hidden location, which many players only discover if they are attentive. This strangeness of being a secret cave, with that mystical climate, contributes to reinforcing the importance of these great knights within the plot. It's a moment when the game uses silence, empty space and symbolism to tell a story without saying a word. You can't help but think about the importance of the Pale King there, in the center, as a figure that unifies this group of heroes. He is practically the pillar of this dark and fascinating universe, and seeing him there, standing like a statue, is a reminder of his grandeur and the tragedy that involves the entire plot of Hollow Knight. For me, this visual encounter is like a pause to reflect on everything I've been through in the game up to that point. The Ogrim's Cave is one of those details that make Hollow Knight not just another Metroidvania. It delivers emotion through silent narrative, through the way the player connects with the story, and through the reward of extra battles. It's the kind of tribute that you feel in your skin that makes the game's world become something much bigger than simply defeating bosses or collecting items. The discovery of the Kitchen of Horrors in the Pleasure House in Hollow Knight is one of those that takes you by surprise and leaves you with a knot in your stomach. The City of Tears already has that melancholic and dark atmosphere, but going up the elevator to the 5th floor of the Pleasure House and finding this secret passage completely changes the climate. You expect to find something strange, of course, but what awaits you there is a darker and more disturbing piece of the game's world, showing that Hollow Knight is not afraid to explore heavy themes. When you discover that kitchen, the feeling is that you are invading a place that should be hidden under lock and key. The scenery of the repentant bodies scattered and the vibe of cannibalism create a unique atmosphere that reinforces how cruel and desperate this universe can be. It's a part that almost forces you to stop and absorb every detail, because the game doesn't deliver this in an explicit or predictable way. You discover it little by little, as if you were assembling a macabre puzzle. And then comes the ghost of Poggy, who appears to tell an even denser story, linked to the lore. It's a moment that made me think a lot about how intelligent Hollow Knight is in balancing narrative with exploration. It's not just a dark place to cause visual impact. There's a story behind it, a personal tragedy that makes everything sadder and more human. I felt like the game was telling me a dark secret, one that you don't want to hear, but that you need to understand all the depth of the world. This type of discovery is what makes Hollow Knight more than a standard Metroidvania. It creates a lived world, full of stories that don't necessarily appear in the main script, but that give texture to the experience. The game's predisposition to make you uncomfortable, to put you in situations that challenge curiosity and the courage to explore everything carefully, makes me value each moment in the exploration even more. This Kitchen of Horror is unbelievably well done to make you feel the weight of the past of that place and of who lives, or died, there. In the end, this secret passage in the Pleasure House is that kind of element that reminds me why I keep coming back to Hollow Knight. It's not just about challenging combats or atmospheric music. It's about having a rich and complex experience, which mixes beauty with cruelty, and that makes me look at every corner of the map with expectation and sometimes a chill in my stomach. It's a small but powerful piece within the larger puzzle that is the game's universe. The Fluke Hermit's room in the junk pit is one of those little treasures that make Hollow Knight so special for fans who love to explore every corner. Finding this peaceful Fluke, hidden behind a false wall, is like a sigh of hope amidst so much darkness and corruption that permeates the game. It's curious to think that it reveals an intact version of the Fluke tribe, before the infection that transformed them into violent and disturbed creatures. For me, this encounter goes beyond a simple Easter egg or a hidden NPC. It's a window to the past, to a world that could have been, and that Hollow Knight perhaps misses as much as we do. The Fluke Hermit almost functions as a mother or protector, a symbol of peace and purity in such a hostile environment. This creates an interesting emotional tension, as it reminds us that the infection not only destroyed the environment, but also erased an entire culture and way of being. And it's funny how the game team manages to convey so much with so little. Just one fluke, one hidden room, and a whole mystery about what they were before the infection. I keep imagining what kind of life this tribe led. If they had rituals, what coexistence was like. If they were really peaceful or just more harmonious than their infected counterparts. This detail makes the exploration even more worthwhile because you feel like you are discovering an untold story that the game left for those who pay attention. The Fluke Hermit's room also touches me because it shows how Hollow Knight mixes beauty and melancholy in a unique way. As much as the game is dark and full of difficult challenges, it delivers moments of delicacy and tenderness, which function as small oases of calm. And this Fluke, silent and calm, is like a reminder that not everything is lost in that devastated land. I believe that these small details like this hidden room are part of what makes Hollow Knight a masterpiece that resonates so strongly with players of all ages. You leave the game not only with the feeling of having completed an adventure, but with the emotion of having found a hidden story, a fragment of a world that existed before the catastrophe. This makes everything worthwhile, in the way that only a great game knows how to do. This moment with the Mask Maker and Hollow Knight is one of those that really stirs the perception of the game, bringing an emotional charge and a mystery that I find fascinating. There in Deepnest, one of the darkest and most dangerous places in the game. The fact that he is always wearing random masks already gives a touch of mystery, as if he were hiding something very deep. The way the player can use the desolate dive to break this specific mask and reveal a true face, or perhaps another mask, is a genius move that surprised me the first time. What catches my attention the most is the visual and narrative impact of this discovery. You are there, in the middle of the chaos and darkness of Deepnest, facing intense challenges, and suddenly you have this almost intimate moment where such an enigmatic character unveils himself, or at least shows something that he didn't want you to see. The feeling that the mask that we all used to understand who he was may not be the final truth makes me think about the complexity of the world of Hollow Knight, where nothing is exactly what it seems. The secret dialogue that arises after this unmasking helps to intensify this aura of mystery because it touches on a question that is rarely so explicit in the game. The true nature of the Mask Maker. That character, who in many moments seems distant and reserved, suddenly reveals a much more human and vulnerable facet, even if this comes hidden under other layers of symbolism. You can feel that he is someone marked by difficult choices and a complicated past, and this only increases my admiration for the depth of the game's narrative. I always thought that Hollow Knight is a master at creating moments like this, which mix gameplay, story, and atmosphere in such an integrated way that you can't separate what you are playing from what you are feeling. This encounter with the Mask Maker is one of those experiences that stays in your memory, because it's not just about defeating an enemy or collecting an item. It's about breaking emotional barriers and understanding that even those who seem most mysterious can have their own pains and secrets. This gives the game a layer of humanity that I value a lot. This scene is a perfect example of how Hollow Knight goes beyond what is expected of a traditional Metroidvania. It's a game that is not afraid to be deep, complex, and sometimes uncomfortable, but that rewards a lot those who dedicate themselves to exploring every detail. The Mask Maker, with his broken mask and his hidden dialogue, becomes a symbol of this journey of discovery and revelation that defines the entire experience, something that makes me want to revisit Deepnest and the character as many times as possible. The mural of the dissected grub at the top of the Tower of Love is one of those details that show how deep and careful the lore of Hollow Knight is. Instead of simply presenting the collector as a villain obsessed with imprisoning grubs, the presence of this drawing suggests that he studied these creatures. It even seems that he sought to understand the grubs to protect them from something bigger, possibly from the infection that plagues Hallownest. This brings a new layer to the collector, making him more tragicomic and complex than a simple threat. It's fascinating to think that the collector, a creature linked to the void, would have a certain dedication, almost paternal, in preserving the grubs. These small beings, normally seen as simple collectibles in the game, come to represent a hope against the contamination that affects the kingdom. The mural is like a scientific symbol within this dark universe, indicating that the collector was not just imprisoning out of madness, but trying to resist the infection in some way. This reminds me of those silent characters who, even in their isolation or madness, try to do the right thing in their own way. This interpretation brings me a feeling of sadness when I realize that the grubs are not just innocent little animals, but carriers of a greater importance for the survival of the world of Hallownest. The collector may have recognized this and done what he could to keep them safe, even if it meant imprisoning them in jars. The mural of the dissected grub indicates a research, a study, almost as if the collector wanted to find a cure or defense using these grubs, making his obsession more justifiable and less irrational. Another point that impacts me is the idea that the end of the grubs has a hidden narrative in this drawing. Grubs are not just targets to be rescued. They carry a deeper meaning that may involve transformation and renewal, themes very present in Hollow Knight. Imagining that the collector was aware of this importance is an incredible detail, which strengthens the idea that even the strangest and most mysterious characters in the story have layers of humanity, or rather of insect, and purpose. In the end, this mural of the Vitruvian grub is a subtle but powerful representation of care and the fight against destruction within the world of Hollow Knight. It transforms the collector from a mere insane henchman to a tortured guardian, trying to maintain a fragment of innocence amidst the chaos. This makes me look at the game with even more respect, valuing these small details that expand the mythology and make us question the true intentions behind the actions of the characters. These ideas and theories come from various interpretations of the game's lore and the meaning of the Tower of Love, the collector and the grubs he imprisons, showing a much more emotional and profound context than just a common rescue mission. Discovering Hornet's room in Weaver's Den in Deepnest was one of the surprises that really got to me on this journey through Hollow Knight. That environment is already one of the darkest and most mysterious in the game, and knowing that in that hostile context, there is such a special space dedicated to her, with that seal of binding guarded, it immediately makes us reflect on all her importance in the story. Breaking walls with spells and using the dash to enter this hideout is one of those moments that give that chill in the stomach, a subtle reward for those who pay attention to the hidden details. What always captivates me in this room is how it connects Hornet to her own origin in a symbolic and practical way. It's not just a physical space, but it seems like an extension of her identity, that connection with everything she represents within this vast world. In games like Hollow Knight, full of silence and environments that tell stories, finding a corner like this for such an enigmatic character is a way to reinforce the narrative that goes beyond what is explicitly told. In addition, the way the game requires you to combine mechanics, spells, and the dash to reach this place is an invitation to explore more deeply. This brings a more flavorful feeling of conquest. Because it's not an obvious passage, it seems like you are deserving this revelation. It's intriguing to think about Hornet's motivations and what this seal of binding means for her and for you, at the same time that you explore these forgotten corners of Deepnest, which is already challenging in itself. This discovery made me think about how Hollow Knight is always concerned with tying up its loose ends, creating connections between characters and places that seem like small enigmas to be solved. Hornet's room is one of those moments where the game's world intertwines with her identity, making us even more involved in her personal journey. It's a reminder of the complexity behind everything we see during the adventure, and leaves a lasting impact on how we see the character. Finding this room is more than just a side story for fans or curious players. It's one of those surprises that make you love even more the game's design, the narrative construction, and the care with the characters that Hollow Knight has. A small hidden gem which makes the exploration worthwhile. And that gives that emotional touch to one of the central figures of the story, making it something that we carry in our memory after turning off the console. Discovering small secrets in Hollow Knight has always been part of the game's charm for me. And the Menderbug's house in Forgotten Crossroads is one of those finds that seem to carry a hidden story full of affection. Breaking the sign at the entrance, which appears with a very low chance of only 2%, already shows how the game likes to reward the player's curiosity and persistence. I remember how, the first time, I was a bit skeptical and curious at the same time, trying to understand what that discreet place hid. When I finally defeated the Menderbug, the feeling was more than just passing an enemy. It was like unlocking a little piece of life in that dark world. The house he guarded was not just a physical space, but a small capsule of stories, reading the diary, full of details about repairing signs and a delicate love for a Mrs. Mender, brought an almost human dimension to those insect characters. That simplicity and the implicit affection in the diary made me see the game with different eyes, realizing that even in such an inhospitable universe, there is room for care and hope. This discovery made me think a lot about how Hollow Knight goes beyond the challenge and mechanical exploration, awakening emotions through its small personal narratives. The dedication to repairing signs, something so simple and mundane, gains a gigantic importance when involved in such pure feelings. Knowing that there is a character there, even if so small and limited, investing love in something so simple makes the experience richer and more touching for me. And you know what's more interesting? That this encounter is not imposed. It's not plastered in our face. It's something that requires patience and attention, almost as if the game wanted to reward the players who really allow themselves to dive into the universe without haste. This makes me value Hollow Knight even more, because it captivates not only by the combats and challenges, but by these small hidden gems that reveal the soul of the game. The Menderbug's house is one of those details that I think every Hollow Knight fan should experience, to feel this mixture of mystery and tenderness that the game manages to transmit. It's a reminder that games don't have to be just action and combat. They can also be about simple and human stories that touch us in an unexpected way. And that's exactly what makes Hollow Knight so unforgettable for me. Finding the Godseeker free in the junk pit and using the dream nail on her to be transported most of the time to Godhome is already something cool. But that tiny 2% chance of accessing a secret room with a forbidden memory is the kind of moment that leaves any fan of the game with their heart racing. It's as if the game itself was playing at hiding secrets for the most attentive, a rare prize for those who face the RNG with patience. I always thought that Hollow Knight has this vibe of reward for persistent explorers. When you find this secret room, it's not just a new location. It's a slice of lore that grabs you by curiosity. It's that kind of detail that transforms a normal gameplay session into something almost sacred, you know? You feel like you are unraveling a mystery that few have had the luck to stumble upon. An extra narrative that connects you even more with the dark and deep universe of the game. In addition, this possibility of a forbidden memory with explosive lore messes with our heads. They are revelations that shed light on characters and events that were camouflaged, adding layers that we don't always notice on the first playthrough. I see this as the way Hollow Knight has to continue surprising, even after so many hours of gameplay. It's a proof that the game is not only beautiful and challenging, it also has a storytelling that rewards our attention to the smallest details. And the most curious thing is that this secret room is almost a hidden treasure in the mountain of content that the game offers. The Urengi, this unpredictable element, makes the experience of discovering the Godseeker much more exciting, because you know that you can try several times and at any moment you will be surprised. I think this reflects a lot the spirit of older games, with that feeling of discovering something alone without being given everything chewed up, something that Hollow Knight rescues very well. This discovery reinforces why the Hollow Knight community is so passionate and active. It's secrets like this that motivate players to continue exploring maps, trying combinations, and even sharing these hidden pearls with each other. For me, finding this secret room is not just a matter of gameplay. It's as if it were an invitation to delve into the lore and essence of the game, creating a unique and personal connection with the Godseeker and the entire universe she represents. It's this magic that I like to talk about to those who love the game.